Thank you very much for joining us tonight at the Bowery Poetry Club, an essential performance space in New York City. My name is Alexandre Alaibegovic. I work for the Albert Camus estate in France, as you probably have guessed from my accent. We are the organizers of the ongoing series Camus, a Stranger in the City. Tonight's event is a part of the celebration of the 70th anniversary of Albert Camus' one and only trip to the United States. I hope you recognize that it's somewhat absurd that I introduce the people who will perform tonight. Indeed, a young Frenchman freshly arrived in the city, presenting New Yorkers to New Yorkers. That would not help the reputation of French people being arrogant, which they sometimes deserve. But I would like to enjoy my privilege, very undeserved this time, to tell you what an honor and pleasure it is for us to have historian Stephen Petrus and singer-songwriter Eric Andersen, who both played key roles in the organization of the entire series, reading Camus' American writings tonight. First, Stephen will read Rains of New York, a short and lyrical text that Camus published a year after his return from the US. Then Eric will follow with American journals, the personal diaries that Camus kept during his 3-month stay in Northern America. As you can see around me tonight, on my right, I thought it would be around me, but it's on my right now. Tonight will not only be simple readings. In the pure beat tradition, Stephen and Eric will be backed by living legend, multi-instrumentalist David Amram, percussionist Cheryl Prashker-Drummer, and sax and keyboard player Robert Aaron. And I learned that actually David's son Adam will participate too, so I would like to thank all of them for making us this great honor. Thank you, thank you. Before the, I would like to thank all of them for participating in this special evening. Though to be honest with you, I have no idea what to expect. That's what happens when one gathers geniuses. It's all about the momentum. All that I know is that I look forward to sitting among you and enjoying this unique performance. But before the show starts, I would like to bring your attention on the fact that it makes a lot of sense to have this event taking place in the Bowery area. Indeed, as you will hear soon from his journals, Camus spent a lot of time, nights more precisely, in the neighborhood during his visit. From the very beginning of the series preparation, we always wanted to have events taking place right here, and I would like to thank the staff of the Bowery, including Carter Edwards, Liz Peters, Oiku Tecton, everyone at the sound, lights, at the bar who were so kind for helping making this desire come true. I also enjoy this occasion to thank the Florence Gold Foundation for its generous support of Camus, A Stranger in the City. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish you a very pleasant evening.
Merci beaucoup, Alexandre, and David, Eric, Robert, Cheryl, so delighted to be here. The Rains of New York, Albert Camus, 1947. New York rain is a rain of exile, abundant, heavy, and dense. It pours down tirelessly between the high cubes of cement into avenues and plunges suddenly into the darkness of a well. Seeking shelter in a cab that stops at a red light and starts again on a green, you suddenly feel caught in a trap behind monotonous, fast-moving windshield wipers sweeping aside water that is constantly renewed. You were convinced you could drive like this for hours without escaping these square prisons through which you wade with no hope of a real tree. The whitened skyscrapers loom in the gray mist like gigantic tombstones for a city of the dead and seem to sway slightly on their foundations. At this hour, they are deserted. 8 million men, the smell of steel and cement, the madness of builders, and yet the very height of solitude. Even if I were to clasp all the people in the world against me, it would protect me from nothing. The reason is that New York is nothing without its sky. Naked and vast, stretched to the four corners of the horizon, it gives the city its glorious mornings and the grandeur of its evenings. when a flaming sunset sweeps down 8th Avenue over the immense crowds driving past the shop windows whose lights are turned on well before nightfall. There are also certain twilights along Riverside Drive when you watch the parkway that leads uptown with the Hudson below, its waters reddened by the setting sun. Off and on from the uninterrupted flow of smoothly running cars, from time to time, there suddenly rises a song that recalls the sound of breaking waves. I think of other evenings, so gentle and swift they break your heart. Evenings that cast a purple glow over the vast lawns of Central Park, seen from Harlem. Clouds of black children are striking balls with wooden bats, shouting with joy, while elderly Americans in check shirts sprawl on park benches, sucking ice creams on a stick with what energy remains to them, while squirrels burrow into the earth in search of unknown tidbits. In the park's trees, a jazz band of birds heralds the appearance of the first star above the Empire State Building, while people stride along the paths against the backdrop of tall buildings, offering to the temporarily gentle sky their splendid looks and their loveless glance. But when the sky grows dull or the daylight fades, then once again New York becomes the big city, prison by day and funeral pyre by night. A prodigious funeral pyre at midnight, as its millions of lighted windows amid immense stretches of blackened walls carry these swarming lights halfway up the sky, as if every evening a gigantic fire were burning over Manhattan, the island with 3 rivers. I have my ideas about other cities, but about New York only these powerful and fleeting emotions, a nostalgia that grows impatient in moments of anguish. After so many months, I still know nothing about New York. Whether one moves among madmen here or among the most reasonable people in the world. Whether life is as easy as all America says, or whether it is as empty here as it sometimes seems. Whether it is natural for 10 people to be employed where 1 would be enough, and you are served no faster, whether New Yorkers are liberals or conformists, modest souls or dead ones, whether it is admirable or unimportant that the garbage men wear well-fitting gloves to do their work, whether it serves any purpose that the circus in Madison Square Garden puts on 10 simultaneous performances in 4 different rings so that you are interested in all of them, but can watch none of them. Whether it is significant that the thousands of young people in the roller skating rink where I spent one evening should look as serious and absorbed as if they were solving simultaneous equations. Whether, finally, we should believe those who say that it is eccentric to want to be alone. In short, I am out of my depth when I think of New York. I wrestle with the morning fruit juices, the national scotch and soda, and its relationship to romance, the girls in taxis and their secret fleeting acts of love, the excessive luxury and bad taste reflected even in the neckties, the anti-Semitism, the love of animals, this last extending from the gorillas in the Bronx Zoo to the protozoa in the Museum of Natural History, the funeral parlors where death and the dead ones are made up at top speed, die and leave the rest to us. The barber shops where you can get a shave at 3 in the morning, the temperature that swings from hot to cold in 2 hours, the subway that reminds you of Sing Sing Prison, ads filled with clouds of smiles proclaiming from every wall that life is not tragic. The beauty of the girls, the ugliness of the old men, the tens of thousands of musical comedy generals and admirals stationed at the apartment entrances, some to whistle for green, red, and yellow taxis that look like Beatles, others to open the door for you, and finally the ones who go up and down elevators 50 stories high. Yes, I'm out of my depth. I'm learning that there are cities like certain women who annoy you, overwhelm you, and lay bare your soul, and whose scorching contact, scandalous and delightful at the same time, clings to every pore of your body. This is how, for days on end, I walked around New York. My eyes filled with tears because the city air is filled with cinders, and half one's time is spent rubbing the eyes or removing the minute speck of metal that the 1,000 New Jersey factories send into them as a joyful greeting gift from across the Hudson. In the end, this is how New York affects me, like a foreign body in the eye, delicious and unbearable, evoking tears of emotion and all-consuming fury. Perhaps this is what people call passion. In the middle of the night sometimes, above the skyscrapers, across hundreds of high walls, the cry of a tugboat would meet my insomnia, reminding me that this desert of iron and cement was also an island. I would think of the sea then and imagine myself on the shore of my own land. On other evenings, riding in front of the 3rd Avenue L as it greedily swallows the little red and blue lights it tears past that 3rd-story level, I watch the skyscrapers turning in our path. Leaving the abstract avenues of the center of town, I would let myself ride on toward the gradually poorer neighborhoods where there were fewer and fewer cars. I knew what awaited me, those nights on the Bowery, where the forgotten men live, those who have let themselves drift into poverty in this city of bankers. It's the gloomiest part of town, where you never see a woman, where 1 man in every 3 is drunk, and where in a strange bar, apparently straight out of a Western, old actresses sing about ruined lives and a mother's love, stamping their feet to the rhythm and spasmodically shaking to the bellowing from the bar, the parcels of shapeless flesh that age has covered them with. The drummer is an old woman too, and some evenings you feel like you'd like to know her life. At one of those rare moments when geography disappears and loneliness becomes a slightly confused truth. At other times, but yes, of course, I love the mornings and the evenings of New York. I love New York with that powerful love that sometimes leaves you full of uncertainties and hatred. Sometimes one needs exile. And then, the very smell of New York rain tracks you down in the heart of the most harmonious and familiar towns to remind you that there is at least one place of deliverance in the world where you, together with a whole people, and for as long as you want, can finally lose yourself forever. Albert Camus, 1947.
Sure. I'm Eric. This is David Amram. I played here once before, and it was completely different. It had a stage there and a wall there, and I don't know what was going on back there. There was some kind of bar. And now it looks like some kind of restaurant in New Orleans with a kind of Art Deco Louis XIV. Does anybody remember the old joint? Yeah. What happened? Sold out. They sold out. Well, Albert Camus wrote the Rains of New York, which was, Stephen gave a beautiful reading of that. And he also kept a journal. And so David and I decided we were going to read you guys from his journal for the few months he was here. And Robert's going to play some piano, and Cheryl Prashker is going to play a little percussion. We have never tried this before. I don't know what is going to happen exactly. I haven't heard a note. And but we know one thing. We all agree that rehearsal is a negative attitude.
I can mention one thing. Someone asked if we've been rehearsing, and I said we've been rehearsing for years, but with other people. And I just wanted to say I've known Eric almost 45 years. The only reason I'm here is because I would have come to listen to him anyway, but his dear friend went online and saw that in 1960, and you can ask your grandparents if you don't believe me, Sidney Lumet had a production of Camus' beautiful play Caligula, and I was fortunate enough to have written the score for it. And Eric didn't even know that I had done that, and I'd forgotten about it, so I'm thrilled to be here. Since this is going to be going to his family, je veux bien dire à la famille d'Albert Camus et tous les amis au Paris et en la France, nous sommes très heureux à faire honneur à ce grand écrivain, et ça nous fait plaisir de célébrer le grand artiste Albert Camus aujourd'hui. And that means, translated in English, we're glad you all showed up.
It was kind of just a little small preface to, or addendum to what he said. My friend Carol Rothman, we were looking for stuff Camus on eBay and these different sources, and she found a playbill of Caligula, one of Camus' great plays about a Roman emperor. And we're looking through it, and music by David Amram. And I'm going, it was a Sidney Lumet play. He was the producer. And I said, David Amram, I'm going to see him in about 5 minutes in Kansas City. So we started talking, and I told him about this thing, and he said, we decided we got to do this together. So, should we give it a whirl?
Yes.
He starts on a boat. American departure. It's March through May 1946, right after the war. Before he came, he was also the editor, the chief editor of Le Combat, is that how you say Combat, an underground resistance newspaper, and Jean-Paul Sartre came before him a year before, who was working for the magazine. And now the magazine was in the open because the Germans lost the war. Okay. A light anxiety of departure has passed. In the train, I meet R, a psychiatrist who is going over there to make contacts. I know he will be in my cabin on the boat, and that's all right because I find them both discreet and friendly. Before Rouen, a sort of tall woman with thick features, dressed in a long fur coat, asked me if all the people in this part of the train are going to America. If I'm going. Yes, I explain. She excuses herself and asks me if she can ask me, what am I going to be doing there? Some lectures. Literary or scientific? Literary. A truly theatrical exclamation, complete with raising her hand quickly to cover her mouth, escapes her. Ah, she says, isn't that marvelous? And 2 seconds later, her eyes lowered. I'm also in literature. Oh, really? Yes, I'm going to publish a book of poems. That's very good, I say. Of course, it is only my first book. Who's the publisher? She gives me a name I don't know. She explains that it is traditional verse. Because my leaning is toward classical forms, I don't know what you think of modern literature, but I don't like what I can't understand. She gets off the train at Rouen. In the dining car, I see R, and we eat lunch sitting opposite a tiny blonde who can't manage to crack her walnuts. In Le Havre, the tiny little woman who seems completely lost asked me to help her. Waiting for the bus, we talk a little. She's going to Philadelphia. The bus is an old police van, dirty and dusty. The air is hot and humid. We drive into Le Havre with its immense ruins. When we arrive at the Oregon, I see that it's a freighter, a large freighter, but a freighter nonetheless. And then board the ship. The ship leaves. The sea is smooth. The wife of one of the sailors is in full mourning, runs clumsily down the pier, waving goodbye to the ship. My last image of France is destroyed buildings at the very edge of the wounded earth. Work on board. Do you want to just hear? I'll just see if I take that.
This morning, it's raining, and the act is swelling. The bar is particularly empty, and I work at peace. The Atlantic is the color of a pigeon's wing. Before lunch, I lie down, and after changing a halftime, I wake up fresh as a daisy. After lunch, I feel too sluggish to work. But I do read War and Peace. How would I have been in love with November? The day drags on heavy, and sometimes I leave John Neshama in bed. Monday, beautiful day. The strong wind, which has been blowing incessantly since we departed, has subsided. The passengers come up into the dock like a mushroom after a rainfall. We breathe easily, and the evening is a magnificent sunset. After dinner, moonlight is on the mainland. Madame Madi and I agree that the most people don't lead their lives that way, and they would like to lead, and it's a question of cowardice. Sunday, they announced that we will arrive the following evening. This week has gone by in a wheel. The coming of Tuesday the 21st, our table decided to celebrate the arrival of spring, drinking until 4 a.m. and the next day as well. 48 euphoric hours during which all relationship rushed forwards to new levels. On Saturday, we left the Gulf Stream and it got terribly chilly. The time passes very quickly, and I'm not in such a hurry to arrive. I finished my lecture, The Human Crisis, and the rest of the time, I look at the sea. The first thing we see is Coney Island in the cold with the gray wind in the sky. It's all rather depressing. We'll drop anchor into the Bay of the Hudson, and we won't disembark until tomorrow morning. In the distance, the skyscrapers of Manhattan rise against a backdrop of mist. Monday.
Go to bed very late, get up very early. We enter New York Harbor, a terrific sight despite or because of the mist. The order, the strength, the economic power are there. The heart trembles in front of so much humanity. I don't disembark until 11 a.m. after long formalities during which I am the only one of all passengers to be treated as a suspect. The immigration officer ends by excusing himself for having detained me for so long. I was obliged to, but I can't tell you why. That's a mystery. At this point, I want to explain something parenthetically. Camus was interrogated a lot by the Germans. He ran into difficulties during the war and the resistance. And so when he came to America, they started asking him a lot of questions. Are are you a communist? That you have friends that are communists? You know, that whole routine, that terrible routine. So he wouldn't talk. So he did just what he did when he was in France. So it took a long time, and finally the embassy had to come down and spring him from the boat. He didn't know why he was being delayed. And he just wouldn't play the game. I don't disembark until 11 a.m., blah, blah, blah. I get the first impact of New York, at first glance, a hideous, inhuman city, but I know that one changes his mind. A few details strike me: that the garbage men wear gloves, that the traffic moves in an orderly fashion without a policeman at the intersections, etc. That nobody ever seems to have change in this country. And that everyone looks like they stepped out of a B film. In the evening, crossing Broadway in a taxi, I'm tired and feverish. I am literally stupefied by the circus of lights. I am just coming out of 5 years of night. And this orgy of violent lights give me for the first time the impression of the new continent. An enormous 50-foot-high Camel cigarette billboard. A GI with his mouth wide open blows enormous puffs of real smoke. Times Square.
Tuesday, I have lunch with a journalist at a French restaurant. I realized that I haven't noticed the skyscrapers. They seem so usual to me, so natural. It's just a question of proportion. And then also, you can't live all the time looking up. Manhattan, magnificent fixed stores, enough to make you also feel the European drool. I admire the women on the street, the color of their dresses, and the colors, reds, yellows, greens, and all the texts which took the time and the insects of their Sunday best. And for stories selling lies, you have to see it to believe it. So much bad taste seems hardly imaginable. Dee affirms the Americans don't like them. That's what they say, but I'm not so sure. Odor of New York, the color of New York, a perfume of iron and cement. The iron dominates all the corner of East 1st Street, links for where the bad, loud jukeboxes smothers all the conversation. To have 5 minutes of silence, you have to go for 5 cents. Wednesday, visiting from Liebling of the New Yorker. Charming man. Others join. I am such a French restaurant. Oh, talks about America like nobody else. In the discussion, I'm going out American funeral homes. He tells me that how they function. One way to know a country is to know how people die there. Here, everything is anticipated. You die, we do the rest, say the advertisements. I walk down Broadway, lost in the crowd and the enormous illuminated billboards. Yes, there is an American tragic. It's what's been oppressing me since I arrived here, but I still don't know what it's made from. The Bowery, side by side for a quarter of a mile, shops selling wedding gowns. I eat alone in the restaurant where I had lunch, and then I go back to write. Negro question. We sent a diplomat from Martinique to the consulate here. He was lodged in Harlem. With regard to his French colleagues, he perceived for the first time that he was not of the same race.
Thursday, March 26, 1946. The day spent dictating my lecture, Human Crisis, at Columbia University. In the evening, a little stage fright, but at the lectern, I throw myself into it right away, and the public is hooked. While speaking, someone lifts the box office receipts, which were supposed to be given to French orphan children. At the end, they announce the theft. And a spectacular thing happens. A spectator proposes that everyone gives the same sum at the exit that he originally gave when entering. Everyone gives much more, and the receipts are considerable. Typical of American generosity. Their hospitality and cordiality are like that too. Spontaneous and without affectation. It's what's best in them. Monday. Go to bed very late, get up very early. Where am I now? Ooh. Friday, beautiful blue sky. Which forces me to remember we are in the same latitude as Lisbon. Something which is hard to believe. In rhythm with the traffic, the gilded skyscrapers turn and turn in the blue above our heads. At 4 p.m., we take off for Jersey. Gigantic landscape of factories, bridges, railroads. Sound familiar? East Orange and a countryside as postcard as can be, with thousands of neat and tidy cottages like toys in the midst of tall poplars and magnolias. Springtime. I'm shown the little public library, bright and gay, which the neighborhood uses a lot. I look in, peek at the card catalog. Under philosophy, W. James. That's it. Sunday. A trip to Staten Island, we eat in Chinatown, and I breathe for the first time in a place where I feel the expansive but orderly life that I truly love, love, love. Ooh. You, give me the drum.
Monday morning, with all the Georgette who'd come into my head from the top of the Bright Empire State Building in a freezing wind, we admire New York, its ancient rivers and overflowing stone. Then with Eddie and Leon to a nightclub without any charm, and I, who has interesting things to say about American love, want to introduce me to the Taxi Girls, a small, dusty, softly lit hall. Each dime boys give you a dance. But if you want to talk to one of the girls, you have to go in the back of the hall where, on each side of a small barrier, it's impossible to come any closer. Impression of repression and terrible sexual expiration. Tuesday, night on the Bowery, poverty. And a European wants to say, finally, reality. The utterly derelict and 20-cent hotels demanded like a saloon, Bowery Follies, where some very old female singers performed to an impoverished audience. And several steps away, the most splendid bridal shops that one can imagine. Everything in one place, mirrors, brilliant, etc. Yet an astonishing night. Vassar College, an army of young starlets who recline on the lawns and their long legs crossed. What they do for fine young people here is worth remembering. Monday, then Alfred Stieglitz, a kind of old American Socrates, said, "As I get older, life seems to get more beautiful, but living is more and more difficult. Don't hope anything from America. We are an end or a beginning. I think we're an end. It's a country that doesn't know how to love." In the evening, circus, 4-ring. Everyone performs at the same time, and I don't see anything. Tucci, human relationships are very easy here because there are no human relationships. Everything stays on the surface, out of respect and from laziness.
Yeah. 19 April, Friday. Another night on the Bowery and the Elevated. We're sitting in the front, which speeds along 5 stories above the ground, and the skyscrapers spin slowly to more miserable neighborhoods where there are fewer and fewer cars. Once again, the Bowery Follies and the old singers who end their careers there. Either you have to be very beautiful or very ugly. Singers who end their careers on the Bowery. But even in ugliness, there's such a thing as mediocrity. When you look from the upper riverside down the highway that runs along the Hudson, the interrupted line of smooth-running, well-oiled cars creates a deep and distant song, which is exactly the sound of the waves. In Philadelphia, enormous gas tanks tower over cemeteries full of flowers. Placid evenings, leaves of Washington, placid evenings on the vast leaves of Washington. Squirrels come to unearth tidbits by your feet, and a million little birds greet the appearance of the first star in the still clear sky above the Washington Monument, offering the sky a momentary relaxation from its imposing face and loveless gaze. Plague. It's a world without women, thus without air. The one who is right is the one who is never killed. So it can't be God. No, no. I have suddenly ceased to be curious about this country. Like with certain people in whom, without explanation, I suddenly lose interest.
Drive from New York to Canada. Large, clean, spacious countryside with small and large white columned houses and tall, strong trees and lawns that are never separated by fences, so that it's one kind that belongs to everybody, where beautiful children and supple adolescents laugh in a life filled with good things and rich creams. Nature here contributes to the beautiful American Fairy Tales. At a small inn in the heart of the Adirondacks, 1,000 miles from everything, entering my room, this strange feeling, the silence of nature, the simplicity of the room, the remoteness of everything makes one decide to stay there permanently, to cut off ties with what had been one's life and to send no news of himself to anyone. New England and Maine, the region of lakes and red houses, Montreal and the two hills, a Sunday, boredom. This big country, calm and slow. One feels that it has been completely unaware of the war. In the course of a few years, Europe, which was several centuries ahead in knowledge, moved several centuries ahead in moral consciousness. At a small inn in New England and Maine, the region of lakes and red houses, and Montreal. Random insights, the idea of mesmerism in the base of fanaticism. Messianicism against man. Greek thought is not historical. The values are pre-existent against modern existentialism.
Stick that in your pockets. The stupendous Quebec countryside. At the point of the Diamond Cape, before the immense breach of the St. Lawrence, air, light, and water interpenetrate into infinite proportions. For the first time on this continent, a real impression of beauty and true magnitude. Quebec, and its history of men who came to struggle in the wildness, driven by a force that was greater than they were. Even the Salvation Army advertises here, and in their advertisements, the Salvation women had red cheeks and brilliant smiles.
Manhattan. Sometimes from beyond the skyscrapers, across the hundreds of high walls, the cry of the tugboat finds you in your insomnia in the middle of the night, and you remember that this desert of iron and cement is an island. The guy from the Holland Tunnel in New York, all day long, he counts the cars which pass endlessly in the deafening din of the whole length of the violently lit tunnel, which is too long for him to see either one of the exits. This is a hero of a modern novel, Sisyphus Revisited. New York rains flow untiringly between the high cement cubes, incessant, sweeping everything. The taxi's rapid monotone withheld wipers sweep water which is incessantly reborn. And the skyscrapers in the gray haze rise up whitened like the immense sepulchreness of this city inhabited by the dead. Through the rain, one sees the sepulchres sway on their foundations. Terrible feeling of being abandoned. Even if I hugged all of the beings of the world in my breast, I would remain unprotected. Julian Green wonders, from the Journal, if it is possible to imagine a saint who writes a novel. Naturally not, because there is no novel without revolt.
At sea. Slowness of this return voyage, the evenings at the sea, and this passage from the setting sun to the moon are the only moments when I feel my heart a little relaxed. I have always loved the sea. It will have always made me something peaceful inside me. Marvelous night on the Atlantic, this hour when the sun has disappeared. And the moon has barely been born. When the west is still luminous and the east already dark. Yes, I have loved the sea very much, this calm intensity, these wakes folded under wakes, these liquid roots. For the first time, a horizon that measures up to the breath of man, a space as large as his audacity. I've always been torn between my appetite for people and the desire to make myself the equal of these seas of forgetfulness. These unlimited silences that are like an enchantment of death. Oh, sweetness of nights where the stars sway and slide above the mass, and this silence in myself, this silence which finally frees me from everything. Albert Camus, The American Journals, New York, 1946.
Yeah.
David Amram. Robert Aaron. Cheryl Prashker. Alexander. It's so cool and great you guys came down to this beautiful, beautiful New Orleans restaurant. And I want to mention, David is very special to my heart because I am a great fan of beat literature. I love like William Burroughs, and everyone read Kerouac when they were like 8 years old, and it screwed their minds up forever. And then Gregory Corso and Allen Ginsberg, these wonderful people, and on the East Coast. And when they did jazz, when they were doing when the jazz thing was happening, like Larry Rivers was here and David Amram. When Kerouac started reading, the whole thing kicked off. It was just him and David Amram. Jack was reading and David was playing, and that's how it all began. And I don't know, but did you want to do something from?
Just very briefly, since they're finally honoring Albert Camus here as a great author, you heard in one of the sections where he mentions how far what he feels was from, he wrote it, I didn't think of it myself, existentialism, which became a brand name for lumping together a whole group of people after the euphoria of World War II, and saying that all these people who were friends, and anyone who lived in Paris knows that the basic thing in Paris was everybody hanging out with everyone and supporting and inspiring everyone, just as Debussy did, as de Maupassant did, as Balzac did. It's been happening for a long time, and it's still happening today. And suddenly, these wonderful writers were informed that they were part of some literary movement, like the 12 Days That Shook the Earth, or the CIA, or the Trilateral Commission, or the Shriners, all of which are wonderful, but have nothing to do with an artist. And now we're recognizing Camus, finally, in this historic moment in New York, as a great writer. And his equal in the United States, Jack Kerouac, had the same problem when suddenly at the age of 35, being totally unknown and unpublished except for one book that never got out of the warehouse, he was suddenly the avatar of the Beat Generation and some kind of a leader of something that even those of us who were in the pictures of that supposedly weren't even aware existed. And that's finally changed, where now today Jack is being judged as an author, just as Albert Camus is being judged as a great man of letters whose work has endured labeling, franchising, misinterpretation, and misrepresentation. And it's so beautiful to see that. And also we have to remember that Albert Camus came from Algeria. Marcel Solal, the great pianist who's still alive, whom I played with way back in Paris in 1954-55, loved Camus' writing, as we all did, but he mentioned, David, he came from the same background as myself and had to struggle because being Algerian meant that you were on a lower level by definition and had to climb up. And actually, Jack had the same problem being Quebecois in Lowell, Massachusetts, the Eastern Seaboard establishment could not deal with the fact that he was the same person wearing a flannel shirt like a bouchon, or that Albert Camus and everything that he wrote mentioned. He was a working writer, a member of the human race and civilization, and an artist who was engaged in society, not a superstar or a super snob. So I just want to play a tiny little tribute to him, to Eric, to Alexandre, et tous mes amis au Paris, et la famille de encore, la grande famille d'Albert Camus lui-même. And it's just a little tribute from another side of the world for some of the music that we would hear in Paris and play sometimes at 3 in the morning, spontanéeusement.
David Amram. It's so beautiful. This is such a beautiful night. David's going to do, he did the music score, not only for Camus, but he did a music score for Jack Kerouac and Allen Ginsberg called Pull My Daisy. He's going to do something on the piano, and I'm going to do a little something after him close the show. So he's going to move down. And his son, Adam, you going to play? His son, Adam, they just did a great gig in Milano about 3 weeks ago. They picked some musicians. Adam, his son, came over and they played at a 900-seat sold-out house in Milano a few weeks ago. So he's going to do a little something from the film Pull My Daisy, so that's cool. It's all coming around in some kind of circle. Everybody okay?
Yeah, this will be a spontaneous version of a song that we did for a film. I mentioned in my book, Offbeat, collaborating with Kerouac, that when we made Pull My Daisy, suddenly a group of friends with day jobs were informed that we were now the worst crime you can commit, which was being fashionable, and then committing the supreme crime of falling out of fashion. And since none of us were interested in that then, and none of us still alive are interested now, because Jack was basically a classical writer in the great tradition of being a novelist. I was and still am a classical composer, and we loved what surrounded us because we loved everyday people, everyday music, all the beautiful things, the geniuses that are not necessarily, certainly were not acknowledged by the Eastern Seaboard establishment in the 50s, but which was such a rich source of inspiration. So we decided for our little film that we should have a little song. The lyrics were by Jack, his road buddy Neil Cassidy, and Allen Ginsberg, and I did the music. And this will be the 2016 Scat Rap One Time Only, April 10th version. So if any of you have iPhones, come up and see us afterwards. We'll see if it was better than before. Well, here we are at the Bowery Poetry Club, and the elegance is overflowing today. And those of us who played there in the very beginning wondered, how could it possibly ever get that way? Well, when Eric invited me, I knew it would be incredible just to read Mr. Albert Camus, because he was a writer and an author and a visionary who always knew what to do, which was to celebrate life and the society and the people who surround you each and every day, and never to succumb to careerism and never end up that way, but rather to be an homme engagé, which he was until the final day that he left us for good. When we did the music 56 years ago, we understood that he should have been with us, but unfortunately he passed away, but we were able anyway to have Sidney Lumet do his play, and you'll be glad to know that's all I've got to say, because the time is running out on this very special day. So if you think perhaps that someone of my age of 85 is certifiably crazy, it's only a reflection of the introduction to this version of Pull My Daisy. Pull my daisy, tip my cup, all my doors are open. Hop my heart for coconuts, all my eggs are broken. Hop my heart song, harp my life, seraphs hold me steady. Hip my angel, harp my life, lay it on the needy. Hop my heart song, harp my life, seraphs hold me steady. Hip my angel, harp my life, lay it on the needy. Well, when Eric Andersen invited me to come here and be with all of you today, I didn't know what was going to happen, but I know every time that I spend time with Eric and play, it always comes out right. It's always out of sight. We never feel worried or at all uptight, because it's just the joy of creativity, and that's the basis of spontaneity. So hope that when you go home this afternoon, you'll certainly know what you should be doing. Before the day is through, get out your old copy of Albert Camus. And if you read him, you'll feel so much better informed and optimistic for life. It'll make you a better citizen of the world and even a better husband or wife. You'll be relieved to know that's all I gotta say. We got a young man from Montreal who can really play. He's going to play his soprano saxophone for you, and then we will be through. How about that, folks? What a saxophone solo for you. Before Eric takes it out, and just before we're through, when we used to play those loft parties long ago, we had plenty of time and really no place to go. We knew that there was something everyone had to know, was to hear the percussionist play a solo, so if Cheryl could come up and play with Adam too. We showed that we're together, don't you know? I will clap them along on this very special song. Here we go now, before we are through. my days that tip my cup. All my doors are open. Half my heart for coconuts. All my eggs are broken. Harp my heart song, harp my light. Sorrows hold me steady. Hip my angel, harp my light. Lay it on the needy. Harp my heart song, harp my light. Sorrows hold me steady. Hip my angel, harp my light. Lay yeah 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 yeah. That's the way we used to scat sing back in the 1950s when people would have Albert Camus books, whether or not they read them. We used to do that as each and every day. And Jack, from being a Quebec Quamley and never speaking English till he was 6 years old, used to hang out with his father and do what he was told. And his dad, Leo, told him when he was still in high school in Lowell, Mon cher Jacques, si tu restes ici, sûrement tu es obligé comme ta mère à travailler toute la vie dans une factory. So Jack split the scene, got accepted into Horace Mann, you know what I mean, and in distinguished New York City. Did so well that he got a football and a literary scholarship to Columbia U. But the third week in football practice, he broke his leg, and Lou Little, the coach, didn't know what to do. So Jack abandoned his dreams and went out to sea and had one book published that didn't sell, didn't make 1 penny. And finally, after 7 years of rejection and no selection, even if it took Albert 70 years to have his book come out here acknowledged today, Jack was weighed down in that junk heap in that very sad period during that day. And finally, Gilbert Milstein, the great third-string critic who used to hang out in Greenwich Village and appreciated Dostoevsky, Baudelaire, Racine, and also Albert Camus, as well as Jack Kerouac, you know what I mean. Gave it a fantastically one-time-in-a-lifetime incredible review. And all the parents who worked 2 day jobs so that their child could be the next great American author and snub everybody to death were so pathologically jealous they didn't know what to do. And finally, Truman Capote said I wasn't writing, it was typing. And now Truman Capote, as great as he was as a writer, sits up on this TV show in the same white suit in heaven complaining and griping. So for all of us here at the old Bowery Poetry Club today, we want to dire merci Alexandre et tous les amis de Paris, and also the great Eric Andersen for making it possible to have something done in this very special celebratory way. So whether you want to write, paint, play, sing, or get yourself an Eric Andersen new record, and if you do, you know it's gonna swing. In the interest of spontaneity, let's all pull our daisy. And for the band, these great musicians, Robert, Adam Amram, and the fabulous Cheryl.
We're going to close with this. Oh man, go to the river to wash his bill of woe. He could go if he wanted to. It's just a boat to row, you know. Listen to me, blue right on rolling all along the shoreline. Keep us safe from the deep and the dark. We don't want to stray too far. Spent today, my old dog Mo, walking down an old dirt road. What he's thinking about, well, I don't know. But for him, I bet the time must go so slow. Oh, he's just a dog, you know. Listen to me, Blue River, keep right on rolling all along the shoreline. Keep us safe from the deep and the dark. We don't want to stray too far. Young man stand with his axe in his hand, believing that the crops all are in. Firewood stacked 10 by 10 for the wife, the folks, the kids, and all of the kin and a friend. Listen to me, Blue River, keep right on rolling all along the shoreline. Keep us safe from the deep and the dark. We don't want to stray too far. We don't want to stray too far. Don't want to stray too far. Thank you all very much for coming. Robert, David, Cheryl, and Alex, and Vicky. Thank you.